Well, it means that I have chosen to listen to his newest release. And some of you might have questions about, well, isn't this a rock channel? Yes, it's a rock channel. But I've chosen to do this especially because of what one of my longtime supporters wrote to me and his reasons for encouraging me to listen to REN, even though REN is not classically rock. And I would like to read a bit. This is Lee Kennison, and if you follow my channel, you know that he is active in the comments, and he has also been very personally encouraging to me and supportive. So I would like to read some of what he wrote to me. He said, "I would like you to be able to experience great art and music at the time it is first released. That way, you may be able to get a sense for what it was like for many of us back in the 60s and 70s, who heard so many great pieces that we knew were great when we first heard them, and for which time has shown to be truly great and significant. This gives you the possibility to see an artist develop who was mostly unknown a year ago, and who is now in the process of potentially becoming well-known even by the mainstream music market, which has been devoid of true variety and creativity for several years." And I appreciate what he said about that, because it is true, this whole channel is about my journey into rock music. But remember that rock music, well, as I've been going through the history of rock music and getting more familiar with it, and if you remember the episodes I did with Carl, where we talked about the course rock music took as it moved into what is now the 21st century, and the idea that classic rock is no longer mainstream. It has become a sort of classical music of the 20th century, because the music that is now popular is typically not rock, at least not by the music industry. And so I do appreciate what is being said here, because it's not just about rock music. It's about the continuing creativity and artistry that we find in music, even in this modern era. Because even as a classical musician, I know that creativity and artistry and great music did not all get created. We didn't run out of the fountain from which that music comes way back 100, 200, 300 years ago. Lee goes on to say that one of the reasons he is excited about REN, for me, not for Lee, but for me, is that he believes it is important for me to see that there is still great creativity, artistry, and message in today's music, since Lee's generation overemphasizes that today's music is crap compared to what that generation had. Now, usually Vlad does the research and gives me a little bit of a summary or some facts that I ought to know before I dive into a piece of music. This time, Lee has kindly done so, and so I'm going to read a few of the things that he sent to me. He says that on October 20, the official weekly chart numbers came out, and REN took the #1 spot in the UK album sales for his Sick Boy album. That's impressive. He was unknown a year ago. Now he's taken the #1 spot, and from what I know from the REN I did earlier, I understand that he has no connection to the music industry. He's basically done it on his own, independently, and that's really exciting. REN has joked in his live streams about being a bit of a hypocrite, since he was really wanting that #1 spot when he realized that it was possible. And this came up in the High REN, which I did. And he had a line that said, "I never chase numbers, statistics, or stats." And here is REN. Of course, I haven't watched these interviews, but this is what Lee has written to me, that in his interviews, REN himself is aware of the fact that his desire for this spot is impressive, and he truly does desire it, even though he doesn't want to be chasing the numbers, And so he's acknowledging that even he himself, as a human being, has that sort of duality of nature that was portrayed in his REN video. It really was quite an accomplishment for an independent artist to get a #1 album, since he didn't have a big label promoting it, and due to his illness, he hasn't been able to tour to promote it, which is what is typically done. I am impressed with what REN has been able to and is still achieving, and I am excited to see how will this develop for him. Now, specifically about the song I'm listening to today, which is Money Game 3. And I have to preface this by saying I have not yet listened to Money Game 1 and 2. But today, since it's the current release, the recent release, I'm listening to Money Game 3. This video was filmed on a very hot summer day this summer in a rural farm building in the UK, making for unpleasant conditions. This video only has one cut in it, which occurs when the camera pans behind his wheelchair just before the string quartet is revealed. Oh, string quartet to come look forward to. Okay. This was because the sequence that followed has a rainwater event that would be too costly and time-consuming to reproduce once it happened. During the water event, notice the malfunction that also causes the viola player on the left side to get wet. Ooh. That sounds bad. REN has talked about how proud he was of her for not ruining the scene by overreacting. You can notice how she moves her arms slightly to try to protect her bow. REN said they paid to have her viola and bow restrung. Good for him. Good for REN. Now, REN has very generously allowed reactors and other people to listen to his music straight through unbroken without confronting them with copyright infringement claims. So, I am very grateful for that, because that means today I get to listen straight through without worrying about copyright details to Money Game 3, start to finish, and then I will comment after that. But before I dive into this piece, I would like to tell you a few words about the sponsor of this video. And yes, this is going to be a little commercial moment, but listen for a moment. Really, if you ever need a tripod, Vanguard is the place to go. Why do I say that? Well, we've been using one of their tripods since over a year now, meaning since the beginning of this channel. And actually not myself, because I'm not the one doing anything with the production or cameras here. Vlad is the one who does that, and it has been his favorite tripod. He's thrilled with it. So now, Vanguard has sent us not one, not two, but 3 new tripods. One of which is what they call a travel size, since we are sometimes traveling. That's one of the things they wanted to offer us. They come with these nice bags, but the tripods, even myself, I really have no clue about such things. When I pick up one of these tripods, I'm impressed with the feel of it, the materials, and the precision and the quality of the products. It feels like a real instrument in my hands. Besides that, you can set these tripods in the most interesting positions, allowing otherwise impossible angles for recording. Another thing which Vlad loves about them, because he's always trying to be creative with his recording experiments. And you see, when they heard that we are shooting using iPhones, because everything we do is with just our iPhones, they also sent us some smartphone holders and a creative photo kit, which are also really nice. All of them are made of metal, and their lock mechanism makes them so precise. Vlad is really thrilled since he's been able to try them out and start working with them. Anyway, if you ever need a tripod, visit Vanguard. You will not regret it. And now, Money Game 3, uninterrupted. Okay, I promised I would go straight through without stopping, but That opening is Grieg. If you don't know the name Edvard Grieg, well, I'll forgive you because he's not such a household name as, say, Mozart or Bach. But I love his music. And any pianist, any classical musician is going to be able to, or classical music lover is going to be able to listen to this opening and say, oh, that's Grieg. That is Grieg's great piano concerto in A minor. And it has this fabulous opening. Well, actually, I might try to play the opening in just a minute because, yeah, I should do that. Then we'll get back to this. It has this fabulous opening where you just start with a little bit of a drum roll, and then the piano comes crashing in, and you have this incredible descending chords down the piano from the very top to the bottom. I might be able to pull it off. We'll see. Well, I love Grieg, so I get excited whenever I hear somebody pull out his music, and that's one of the reasons my eyes are sparkling when I hear REN using a bit of Grieg to open his music. I think that's fabulous. Well, it's not such a household name as Bach or Beethoven, but I bet you've heard some of his music before because, for example, this one is really well known. I'm always so excited when I can finally have my students learning Grieg, when they're finally to the level where they can have that as a contrast to the Bach and the Beethoven and the other music that they're exploring and learning as they progress. Oh, there's another great one. Let's see, I think it starts somewhere around here. Yeah, something like that. You know that one, right? So anyway, that's Grieg. And when I heard REN using his piano concerto opening, I want to show this to you. I'm wishing I had been practicing. I feel like for something of this substantial nature, I should have done a bit of preparation. But of course, well, I'm just listening to this and discovering. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to go slow, okay? Because I haven't been preparing this for anything. It does start on A minor. To E, and then it tumbles down. Do you hear it? So let's go back to REN now and compare the two. And okay, I am going to try to let this run all the way through. I am curious to see how he develops this, and we'll see what comes of it. Is it going to show up later? Is it just the opening? Don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing him at all for using Grieg. I think it's great that he's borrowing and reapplying from some of the greats through history, and I love it. So let's see how this goes. It's kind of like a drum roll. He's a little bit stiff in his hands, isn't he? Sorry, it's the teacher in me coming out. Not Grieg. he has this way of making his videos really disturbing, even though there's nothing really. There's something creepy and really deeply disturbing about the way he presents these ideas. I suppose intentionally, right? Ah, that voice again.
Tell you a story about a boy named Jim.
It was
1 year old.
What
and his
is this
first
now?
words were mine, gimme. 2 years old, he was walking. 3 years old, walking quickly. 4 years old, he was running round the pavements of his city. 5 years old, and his daddy told him, listen here, son, you gotta learn to be a man. A man, he works for what he wants. 6 years old and he's reading, writing, top of the bunch. And when he's 7, his progression made him student number 1. 8 years old and he's praised for unusual grades. 9, his parents paid for private school to nurture the flame. 10, 11, 12, 13, he ascends and ascends. His daddy tells him, son, money is the means to all ends. 14, solving complex mathematical equations. At 15, IQ 150, still elevating. 16, he develops complex software code that detects weaknesses in cybersecurity protocols. 17, and he sells his vision, keeping the share. Not yet an adult, but he's practically a millionaire. 18, and his daddy tells him, now you're a man. This world don't give a damn about you, so take all that you can. 19, he turns a profit, stocks and shares, invest in product. 20, double down deposits. 21, his income rockets. 22, he learns that truth is just an obstacle to wealth. If you manipulate the data, then the lie will sell itself. 23, a life of luxury, crystal and cocaine. 24, he makes the Forbes list, they're applauding his name. 25, and his daddy tells him, listen here, son, while you're sitting in that palace, that don't mean that you won. 26, a business shift, he switches business to arms. He's 27, dealing nuclear and shells in Iran. 28, inside the Senate, money bought him a seat. He's 29, a role of counsel in the president's suite. Now he's 30, his daddy says you're losing the race. You're just a servant to the king, not even in second place. 31, a big maneuver for his daddy's approval, moving imports over borders from the exports out of Cuba. 32, moving grams, growing kilos to tons. He's 33, filling warehouses with powder and guns. 34, turf war with nobody to stop it. Blind eye from the po-po inside of his pocket. "35, he gets the call. I'm sorry, son, but it's your father. Had a heart attack. I'm sorry, he's gone. 36, getting pissed off, abusing his product. 37, eyes glazed, disposition demonic. 38, with a prostitute, a moment of passion, heating up a silver spoon and then chasing the dragon. 39, getting reckless and hungry for power. Daddy's words are still driving him to kill and devour. Makes a move against the cartel, but the strategy's flawed. They retaliate and leave him in a hospital ward. A bullet buried in his vertebra and one in his leg. The doctor sighs and says, I don't think you'll be walking again. Fuck.
I'm telling you, this guy's impressive. It's interesting the way the camera... Oh, I've got to stop talking because I see stuff coming. I'll talk after.
Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. He was 40 and he cursed the words, mine, gimme. 41, he wasn't walking. 42, not walking quickly. 43, never running round the pavements of his city. 44, inside a palace with a mountain of gold. But those riches turn to rubble when perspective evolves. Weighing heavy on his conscience is the value of gold. Lamborghini for a life, trading money for souls. Jimmy followed the code inside the land of the free. Put your hand inside the cookie jar, take more than you need. And his example is exaggerated versions of me. And it's a version of him, and it's a version of she, and it's a version of you. There's no escaping the blame. The way we live is parasitic. Fuck the money and fame. Cut the music. This isn't entertainment. This is real life. The way we live is lunacy, community, it declines. Hyperpolarized, always fighting, then we divide. Truth is less important than the money that we designed. Money's an invention. Politics from our invention. They all come from people's ideas. Did I mention? Border's an invention. Law and order fuel the tension. It leads to people killing each other. My solution? Everything is subject to change. We could build utopias if individuals were taught to use their brains. But if we teach kids in schools to always be sheep and put themselves before the herd if there's more money for me, then there's no future I see where the humans survive. We're parasites inside a petri dish with cannibal minds. Mold will grow upon the surface and consumes till it dies. And our fate could be the same without this story to the wise.
Oh, here comes the water moment.
45. Jimmy comes home out of the rain, soaking wet upon a wheelchair, drinking again. He is everything he wants, he is fortune and fame. He's a fortunate fool with an unfortunate fate. With a 45 caliber aimed at his brain. 45 a fitting number cause his age is the same. Here's the words of his father, it's such a damn shame. Then he presses on the trigger of a money game.
Wow. I lost track of time. I saw at the beginning that it was close to 10 minutes, 9 minutes or something. And I was thinking, okay, this'll take a while. He pulls me into his world and his story and the point he's trying to make, what he's communicating. It's not just entertainment, and that's what I love about it. And I guess I felt that when I watched the first one, REN. And now as I'm returning and watching this, I feel like, yes, he is conveying, proclaiming a message, giving a message. And he's doing it in a way that really grabs you. It's riveting. It demands your attention, and it makes you stop and think. Well, I mean, I should be talking about the music. I should be talking about so many things. Let's see. I need to gather myself together here for a moment. Okay, let's start with the music. Let's go back to the beginning, and I probably won't go all the way through the video this time, but I especially want to spend some time in the first portion of it, where the piano features as a significant part of the whole musical scheme, and let's just examine it. This is the Grieg, right? So there are several things that catch my attention right away. In addition to the fact that it's Grieg, okay? I've made enough of that. I won't say any more about it for now. Although it might be kind of fun to make a separate video, a short little video, maybe comparing exactly what REN is doing with what Grieg did and make a comparison. It might be fun. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, that would be great, but obviously it's up to you.
Okay, I'm not promising. I'll think about it, but I might. We'll see. But Grieg aside, the way he plays this gives it a very dramatic, somber, and suspenseful opening. But it's not just the way he plays it. It's the other elements that come into it. The musical tone of the instrument. This is a really fine piano. Obviously, I don't know what all he's done to the sound, if anything, but I think, if I remember correctly, wasn't it Lee also wrote and said that he was maybe playing a CFX?
Yeah, that's
piano?
from CFX, yeah.
Well, my little electric piano here actually has the CFX sound as the sound that comes out. Well, there are some others that I can do too, but the CFX sound. It's a really fine piano sound, and you hear it here in, of course, this is the acoustic CFX, the original CFX. And I have to be careful now, because now that I own an electric piano, I have to be careful that I don't belittle the electric pianos and say that the acoustic is the real deal and no, I won't say that. But I still have this tendency to call the acoustic a real piano and this an electric piano. It's not that this is not a real piano, it's just that maybe it's a lazy way of differentiating. Anyway, so we have this fabulous piano sound here, and there's a lot of depth to the sound and resonance, and we hear it more so because of what we're seeing visually. We also have this darkness in the background, which I think it plays a part in focusing our ears towards the darker tonal qualities that we're hearing. There's something about the contrast of the white keys, the brightness of the white keys, and then this unknowable background around it. And then when his fingers come on the keys, I'm curious about his technique. I'm curious if he has studied piano. It's a bit unorthodox, I'll say that. And
But by himself using YouTube.
Ah, okay. Well, he's getting along pretty well then. If he were a student of mine, I would encourage him to do a few things differently, but he obviously does a fine job, so that's wonderful. And I want to pause to make a point about that, because since I've brought it up now, I may as well say, it's very easy for musicians and teachers from different backgrounds and different schools of thought on technique and how to play the piano to be belittling and denigrating towards anything that differs from their technical philosophy or perspective. And I try to be very careful about that, because I try to remind myself that historically, there have been some very, very different schools of technique, we call them. And they look so different. And some of the great legendary artists of the past have had what we might call unorthodox technique. So when I say that his technique looks unorthodox, I'm not saying it in a way that means he's no good. It's simply unorthodox and interesting to me from my teacher's perspective. When he puts his hands on the keys and then he does that little da-da-da-da-da of his fingers. Well, that's kind of how I felt when I sat down and went to play the Grieg opening, because whew, that's a lot to tackle, especially if you haven't been rehearsing it beforehand. Here, I think it has a little bit of a different message. I think it's, okay, get ready, this is coming. Here we go. And then it's not about the music that's coming. It's about the story that is being told. Okay, I gotta tell you about Jimmy. All right, well, the only thing to do is dive in. Here we go. And I get this feeling that those fingers on the keys are kind of giving that preparation for us. There aren't very many pianists that would play with such heavy rings on their fingers. Obviously, I think this is also part of the dramatic storytelling, visual effects here. But obviously he did it, and he seems to have done quite well to my ears. And it doesn't seem to impede his motions. And okay, maybe it adds some extra weight to the hand, get that big dark sound out. Joking, but anyway. But if I could get my students to play their arpeggios that enthusiastically, I'd be thrilled. Some of them do, actually. Maybe I should show this to some of them who aren't so excited about it, and maybe they'll like to practice that little run up and down. That would get the job done. Chromaticism here, descending. This is where I commented about how, in the first listen, how he has this way of making these videos and his stories really disturbing at a deep level. And as I'm looking back at this and thinking about the music, I think the music plays a part here, because of course we have the visuals. We have these people with their heads covered, wearing a noose around their neck as if they're ready to get hung, and all the dark and the contrast and the spinning motions, all of that, kind of puts us at unease. The music too. I'm listening to this ya da 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 da, and it's a bit unbalanced, intentionally so. If we try to tap the beat along with it, let's try this. You notice how the first one, ya da 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 ba da da da, the first one, da da, is on the beat. And we feel like the second one should be, but it's not. It's delayed a fraction. Bum 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 bum. And it's still very heavy as if it were a beat. Bum, 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 bum. And it makes us feel really uneasy because we know where the beat is. At the same time, the music is saying there's something else here that's really heavy, but it doesn't fit. Both sides are not equally weighted. Well, let me say it differently. Both sides feel equally weighted, but they are not equally spaced. And it's another way of giving us this feeling of deep unease. So we have not only the visuals, we also have the music setting us up for this whatever is coming. Of course, the dramatic pauses and within those spaces you see things happening and you hear things like footsteps and breathing and the rope untying. All of that plays into our perceptions and our experience of it. This is such a beautiful melody. And listen to the piano underneath it. It has a very almost pavane, saraband type slowness to it. And in some ways we could say it's a bit like a funeral march. But at the same time we have this beautiful melody on top. It's as if he's combining, and now that I've heard the whole thing, I'm thinking, just this is happening in my mind in this moment, this sort of funeral march quality, which is kind of foreboding, foretelling of the end. At the same time, it's very maybe not innocent, but in a way it sends us back in time, and it sets us up feeling as if, I don't know, we're looking out over some scene that is absolutely beautiful and peaceful. So beautiful and peaceful that it hurts to look at it. That's the way I experience this melody as it starts. And underneath that, this sort of funereal piano accompaniment. It's like he's summarizing the beginning and the ending of this story. At the same time, he's in front of this mirror, which is reflecting, only it's not like Janus, facing outwards both ways. It's facing inwards, looking at oneself, while we are also getting ready to hear the story about somebody else. Well, REN did say at the end that this is you, this is me, this is everyone. So as I'm going back through to look at this, I'm realizing there's so much thought and care put into the crafting of his work. And I truly appreciate that, because it's not just some bit of entertainment or shock quality story told to, excite us or make us frown at somebody else. He's really putting thought into every element of this. think I want to play this with somebody playing it on violin or something. Although I could probably adapt it for harp. Maybe I will.
Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. 1 year old.
Listen to how the piano becomes so harsh
2 years
and
old, he was
assertive.
Walking. 3 years old, walking quickly. 4 years old, he was running
Like it's
round the
marking
pavements
points
of
in
his city.
time.
5 years old, and his daddy told him, "Listen here, son, you gotta learn to be a man. A man, he works for what he wants." 6 years
Like
old,
it's
and
pounding
he's
this into
reading,
his
writing,
mind
top
as
of the
he's
bunch. And when he's
growing
7,
and
his
being
regression made him
taught
student
and
number 1.
you could
8
say
years old, and he's praised for
conditioned
unusual
for
grades.
this life.
9, his parents paid for private school to nurture the flame. 10, 11, 12, 13, he ascends and ascends. His daddy tells him so.
I like this. Bum, 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 da-dum. I think it's great the way it builds and it adds another layer and another layer. A bit like some of the old canons where, canon meaning the form of music, not the gun. Canons which were this sequence of harmonies which could be repeated over and over and over, and each time it came around, more instruments, more layers could be added, kind of singing in a round style. But the composers did more than just getting us to sing "Row, row your boat" in a circle, round and round. Each time it comes, another instrument would layer on. Think of Pachelbel's Canon in D. If you listen to the original version, not some piano arrangement, but the orchestral version, you hear it start with just a lone cello. And then the next time it comes around, another instrument adds, and then another. And this is kind of what's happening in the piano here, is we have this chord sequence. Bum, 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 bum. And each time it comes, it builds more. More volume, sometimes more notes, sometimes branching out in range, so that by the time we get a little ways in, ta-dum, ta-dum, it's building this incredible wall of sound, this wave of sound that comes crashing over us.
Pavements of his city. 5 years old, and his daddy told him, "Listen here, son, you gotta learn to be a man. A man, he works for what he wants." 6 years old, and he's reading, writing, top of the bunch. And when he's 7, his regression made him student number 1. 8 years old, and he's praised for unusual grades. 9, his parents paid for private school to nurture the flame. 10, 11, 12, 13, he ascends and ascends. His daddy tells him, "Son, money is the means to all ends." 14, solving complex mathematical equations. At 15,
Oh, I
IQ.
love that too. So Ren has been building the drama with his voice and with the lyrics and building the rhythm, and then suddenly the piano in this moment falls into the same rhythm that he's speaking, and they join together to create a sort of massing of means, massing of forces, where both sides come in and give us an even more powerful experience sonically.
1, 8 years old, and he's praised for unusual
Listen to
grades.
Ren's
9, his
melody.
parents paid for private school to nurture the flame. 10, 11, 12, 13, he ascends and ascends. His daddy tells him, "Son, money is the means to all ends." 14, solving complex mathematical equations. At 15, IQ 150, still elevating. 16, he develops complex software code that detects weaknesses in cybersecurity protocols. 17,
right
and
with
he
Ren's
sells his
singing.
vision, keeping the share. Not yet an adult, but he's practically a millionaire. 18, and his daddy tells him, "Now you're a man. This world don't give a damn about you, so take all that you can." 19, he turns a profit, stocks and shares, investing.
And because they are both so in sync and so perfectly timed together, then when that dramatic pause comes, again, it's one of those riveting moments of, listen, because something is coming. And then the piano goes on, and it gets to be a bit more commercial sounding in this moment, which is perfect because REN is talking about the money elements, and he's throwing money out, and he's giving all of these. The music is cueing us to appreciate what he's telling on screen even more deeply.
Tells him, now you're a man, this world don't give a damn about you, so take all that you can. 19, he turns a profit, stocks and shares, invest in product. 20, double down deposits. 21, his income rockets. 22, he learns that truth is just an obstacle to wealth. If you manipulate the data, then the lie will sell itself. 23, a life of luxury, crystal and cocaine. 24, he makes the Forbes list, they're applauding his name. 25.
It almost sounds like there's some electronic instrument or maybe some bass in there beyond the piano. I don't know if they used another instrument or if it's just the way they recorded the piano, but there's something there that is more than just a raw piano sound to my ears.
Luxury, crystal and cocaine. 24, he makes the Forbes list, they're applauding his name. 25, and his daddy tells him, listen here son, while you're sitting in that palace, that don't mean that you won. 26, a business shift, he switches business to arms. He's 27, dealing nuclear and shells in Iran. 28, inside the Senate, money bought him a seat. He's 29, a role of counsel in the president's suite. Now he's 30, his daddy says you're losing the race, you're just a servant to the king, not even in second place. 31, a big maneuver for his daddy's approval, moving imports over borders from the exports out of Cuba. 32, moving grams, growing kilos to tons. He's 33, filling warehouses with powder and guns. 34, turf war with nobody to stop it. Blind eye.
I love this moment, and it's not just the piano, but something caught my eye, and it's the spinning of the globe, and something about the way everything combined in that moment. When I first saw it, I felt as though the spinning of the globe were signifying the passing of days and the passing of time. And then later on, when he's in the wheelchair and he's spinning and the camera is spinning around him, giving this spinning effect in the wheelchair, I felt like, again, it was referencing this spin of the globe. I just wanted to point that out. I almost forgot to mention it because I saw that on the first time through, and I thought it was beautifully communicated.
With powder and guns. 34, turf war with nobody to stop it. Blind eye from the po-po inside of his pocket. 35, he gets the call. I'm sorry son, but it's your father. Had a heart attack, I'm sorry he's gone. 36, getting pissed off, abusing his product. 37, eyes glazed, disposition demonic. 38, with a prostitute, a moment of passion, heating up a silver spoon and then chasing the dragon. 39, getting reckless and hungry for power. Daddy's words are still driving him to kill and devour. Makes a move against the cartel, but the strategy's flawed. They retaliate and leave him in a hospital ward.
It's a little bit modified here, but it's the same thing.
And one in his leg. The doctor sighs and says, I don't think you'll be walking again. Fuck.
Such great use of dramatic moments of silence. So good.
Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. He was 40 and he cursed the words, mine, mine, gimme. 41 he wasn't walking, 42 not walking quickly, 43, never running round the pavements of his city. 44.
It's interesting, the string quartet layout, which seems to have been chosen here. Well, string quartets come in different formats, actually, but typically we might have well, I won't say typically even. Sometimes we might have 2 violins and a viola and a cello. Or in this case, we have 2 cellos and a violin and a viola. It gives it again, I hear him tending towards the richer, deeper bass sound world to convey his message and the emotions in the music. And this string quartet here has a very old world reflective quality to it. It's as if he's well, this is after he's ended up in the wheelchair, and it's like he's beginning to reflect on his life, or this is sending us back to the beginnings of his life in a way, just like, let's see, I think in the lyrics. Suddenly the story starts over again. Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. He was 40, and then it's 41, he wasn't walking. 42, not walking quickly. 43, never running around the pavement of his city. It's kind of the retrograde version of his life. And we also feel like he's suddenly having to face his life and what he's done with it. And the music with this reflective background is sending us backwards. It's also sending us inwards and letting us see Jimmy start to reflect on, I mean, he's forced to. He can't go and do what he wanted to do anymore. And he's here with all the wealth and riches. Let's see, it says, inside his palace with a mountain of gold, but the riches turn to rubble when perspective evolves. Weighing heavy on his conscience is the value of gold. A Lamborghini for a life, trading money for souls. The lyrics are telling us that he's starting to reflect and feel the weight of what he's done, and the music is sending us that direction as well.
Let me tell you a story about a boy named Jimmy. He was 40 and he cursed the words, mine, mine, gimme. 41, he wasn't walking. 42, not walking quickly. 43, never running round the pavements of his city. 44, inside a palace with a mountain of gold, but those riches turn to rubble when perspective evolves. Weighing heavy on his conscience is the value of gold. Lamborghini for a life, trading money for souls. Jimmy followed the code inside the land of the free. Put your hand inside the cookie jar, take more than you need. And his example is exaggerated versions of me, and it's a version of him, and it's a version of she, and it's a version of you. There's no escaping the blame. The way we live is parasitic. Fuck the money and fame. Cut the music.
And this is so well done here, because it's turning us towards the reflection on the story of Jimmy. It's sending us back in time, and it's also bringing us to a kind of climactic moment of self-reflection, as he says, his example is exaggerated versions of me. And it's a version of him, and it's a version of she, and it's a version of you. There's no escaping the blame. REN, again, is calling us all to take account of ourselves and look at ourselves honestly in the mirror, and to see ourselves for who we are. Just like at the beginning, he takes off his hood and he looks in the mirror and he sees, he's examining himself. Who is he really? How does he look? What is he what is he as a person? And now he's calling all of us to say, each of you stop. Take time to look in the mirror and see who you really are. Because all of us as humans have these tendencies. And when they get out of hand, when we allow them to run free, stories like this come. And if we will take the time to stop and assess, evaluate, and choose a path that is a better road, more outward looking. Isn't it interesting the way he contrasts the inward with the outward, and the fact that we have to have this inner self-examination in order to not be selfishly driven. And so it's this wonderful pull between the two and collaboration between the two, looking outward, looking inward, examining ourselves and choosing not to live for ourselves or for those who would like us to feed their desire to live for themselves, as Jimmy's father. And I love the way he uses the music to help carry the message. It is not merely background sound. It is not something to keep the sense of motion going forward as the scenes pass on the screen. It is a very deeply integrated collaboration between the two elements, the three elements. There are the lyrics, there is the visual movie, and there is the music. And all three of them are so intertwined. Now the story itself, let me pull out my copy of the lyrics here. And there were some things that stood out to me. I guess I brought a few of them up, but I wanted to take enough time to really think about what he has to say here as well. I mean, it's a fairly simple story. It's just tracking the time, the development of this Jimmy. It brings out some things that kind of remind me of the Wall project, which I'm doing, and that is that when a person ends up as an adult with a character that is not something that we would want to uphold to our children or to ourselves as somebody to emulate, to model our lives after, such as Jimmy. It's not all his fault. His first words were mine, gimme, but who taught him those first words? Who cultivated that character? And then we're told that his daddy told him this, his daddy taught him this, his parents put him here to nurture certain characteristics and qualities. And of course he follows that path because those are the role models he has and those are the influences he has in his life. And he's obviously a very intelligent person, very promising, IQ 150. He becomes incredibly successful very young. I mean, it's a fairly simple story. But this is one of the things that stood out to me at the beginning, is that even with this simplicity of the story, Ren is making sure that we don't just put all the blame on Jimmy for being who he was. It's a whole history of life that brings a person to that point. And I had to smile when he got to the part about dealing weapons, because it reminded me of a movie. Let's see if I can remember. I think it was called Lord of War, and it's a real life story of somebody kind of following this path, actually, and it caught my attention as he was going through. It's a worthwhile movie to watch if you haven't seen it. I think it was Nicolas Cage doing the acting in that one. Anyway, But as we're going through these lyrics, one of the other things that stood out to me is this concept of numbering every line, numbering every year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 22, 23, 24, 25, 31, 32, 36, 37. Practically every line starts with a number, and it's really a bit of a surprise, at the same time a nice idea, because think about how often do we find such mathematical number lines incorporated into poetry, into art, in such a formulaic manner. And obviously REN is making a point here that this is a progression, it's a development, and there's a sort of a scheme, design to his life. And towards the end he said, of course this is exaggerated, because it's supposed to be an exaggeration of a story that is the story of each one of us. You, me, and everybody around us. We all have some element of this story within us. And the numbers exaggerate that, but they also point out something else, which I guess if I were going to sum up this entire story in a simple way, I might do it with an illustration. Maybe I'll actually do that, because what I see is something like this, a sort of graph illustration, something like this. We'll make the lower line be, okay, Jimmy's life and wealth. Okay, this is how his life is growing and developing, not only time-wise as he's aging, but also wealth-wise. So we end up with 1, 2, 3, and then the years pass by. He's 23, 24, and then he ends up in his 30s, and the years go on, and finally he ends up at 45. Now, along the side, we could say that this is his perception of his character, of his value as a person. And we could say that as the years go on, his perception of himself as a person grows as well. So we start down at the bottom, and as it goes, so his perception of himself increases. But then we get to the end of the story, and as the story comes to a close, it tells us that, in the last lines, that this is not actually what Jimmy's life was. Suddenly he realizes that this is not the illustration of his life. This is the illustration of his life. And that is the point at which his life ends, because he suddenly can't face it anymore. He is not progressing 1, 2, 3 and growing. Instead, he is regressing and diminishing as he ages. And that's kind of the sum of the story. But it's a good thing that it's such a simple story, because it is a parable of sorts, an illustration. Well, REN says it's an illustration, and warns us about ourselves. It is a great work, and I have to say that I've enjoyed this project today, and I look forward to seeing what Ren has to bring to us in the future. I do look forward to seeing how he grows, and I also have to say that I am happy to see in this work that he has not lost his focus, he has not lost his special pointed quality that makes him shine in his work. And I hope that that will continue as he continues to grow as well. Great work, excellent story, a good message for all of us, and I'll see you next time.